everyone, and welcome back to GirlDad. I'm Abigail Frechette.
And I'm Peter Frechette.
We are once again joining you for the second week on video.
Yes. And I apologize to our loyal listener who thought I should change my glasses strap. I have yet to get a new strap, but I will be doing that so that they match my bracelets. Something to liven things up a little bit, perhaps.
Yes, and hello to all our loyal audio listeners. It's good to chat with you today. Um,
And I
this
will say that
Yeah.
we did get a couple of emails this week, which so happy at girldadpcast@gmail.com. But they were very thoughtful and they asked questions about some of the things that we talked about last week. And I love that. And so I hope that people will continue to reach out to us and perhaps share some experiences that they have with the topic that we're discussing today.
Yeah, that's very cool. Well, they can also reach out because I might get things wrong about today's topic. So we're going to be talking about Broadway today, and I do want to preface this episode. I'm in a little bit of a weird mood. It's really, really hot right now in Midtown Manhattan, and it's getting to my brain a little bit. So if this is a little kooky, I apologize. But that's why I'm giving you a warning. But yeah, we're talking about Broadway. So I'm gonna go through some of like the info, the history about it, and then we're gonna talk about like our personal experiences with live theater.
Excellent. And the other comment that we got, one of the other comments that we got last week about the visual was that we weren't looking at the camera enough. And I can tell you right now that having looked at your notes for this particular episode, you are to be excused for not looking directly at the camera. I, of
Uh,
course, will be looking directly at the camera because I've done nothing to prepare for this episode.
I do have a
I
lot of
could take my glasses off right now and it would not matter at all.
I have a lot of notes for today, so if it gets a little boring, Dad has been given full permission to cut me off at any moment and tell me, "Come on, let's move it a little forward." But let's start with I feel like I'm also going to be talking about some geographical parts of Manhattan in specific, so I'm going to try my best to use universal terms in the best way possible because it is kind of important to the history because of how important Broadway theater is to New York City itself. Um,
Perhaps I'll get really ambitious and I'll throw up a map on
oh
the
my goodness, that would
on the
be no
video feed.
promises for that, but that would
Definitely
be
no
nice.
promises.
But let's talk about like what makes a Broadway show. So then there are 41 professional Broadway theaters in New York City. The classification for that is that they have to have at least 500 seats. They are traditionally now located in the theater district through Lincoln Center along Broadway, which is one of the main streets within Manhattan. So they're
One of the
kind of,
wider streets, some would say
yes,
it's
the
broad.
Broadway.
Yes.
Yes. So it's primarily located now in Midtown Manhattan in the Times Square neighborhood, but a little bit off of that. Um, Combined with London's West End, it is the highest form of theater in the Western world. There are also other classifications. So there's off Broadway and off Broadway. Uh, Off Broadway is smaller than 500 seats, but bigger than 100 seats, while off Broadway is smaller than 100 seats, non-commercial, avant-garde, or productions held outside of traditional theater venues. So it's
So
kind of
it's not
anything
geographical
else.
from it's not geographical from the standpoint of off Broadway being further away from Broadway. Is there
Not
a Do you
necessarily.
have to be within a certain distance of Broadway to be called a Broadway theater?
No, actually, you don't. So, I mean, it just so happens that that's where the Broadway theaters are, and as the city's developed, they've just stayed there. Um, it has a lot to do with now. there's kind of a slight monopoly over like who owns Broadway theaters. I believe there are three companies that own all of the theaters and kind of run all of that part of the
Wow.
theater district, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, industry. Um, but there's a lot of off-Broadway theaters in the Broadway area on Broadway. And actually, I think there's actually only technically three Broadway theaters that are actually have Broadway as their address. Most of them are on streets off of Broadway. So the numbered streets, like 42nd Street is a really big one. But they're just kind of collectively in this area. I would say Lincoln Center is kind of the furthest uptown. And then I don't know how far downtown it technically goes, but probably not below 40th Street, I would say. And to give you Lincoln Center is probably around like 62nd Street, so that's kind of the radius we're working in here. Um, and the so traditionally Broadway shows run Tuesday through Sunday with 8 shows a week. So there's a if you're doing the math, that means there's one show every day except for on Wednesdays and on Saturdays. There are 2 shows because they have a matinee on those days. And then on Sunday, instead of an evening show, they only have a matinee. It has actually also become so it used to be that shows would be like 7:38 at night every night that they run. Um, Recently, a lot of shows have been moving their Tuesday time up specifically because you get more locals going on weeknight shows and less tourists. So it's like get out of work, go to the show right away kind of energy a little bit more, which I think is a smart strategic move. But
Kind of
that's
what the
kind
same
of
thing they have done with sports and
yeah,
7:30 games moving to 7 o'clock just to
yeah,
try to make it more appealing.
yeah. I am a huge fan of a matinee. Love that. Get it to the theater at 2 or 3 o'clock, leave, go have dinner. It's just lovely.
Mwah.
Yeah, chef's kiss. But that's kind of like factually, I think what you need to know about Broadway as it stands and has stood for a while. I'm now going to go into some of the earlier history, and then kind of bring us up to current day. So, in the mid 18th century, theater started to be established in Lower Manhattan, and then it was kind of put on pause by the Revolutionary War. So, you were getting a lot of these kind of theater troops a little bit more. There was less of a stationary kind of theater world, but it was traditionally in Lower Manhattan. In the 1840s, P.T. Barnum of circus fame and others continued to build up downtown Manhattan as this kind of entertainment hub, if you will. Um, Eventually, however, and that, I mean, at that time, the entertainment there was mainly for lower middle class folks. So there wasn't opera yet. We weren't getting to that point. That happened.
Was it burlesque and stuff like that, or
Yeah, so it was a combination of kind of like circus, vaudeville, burlesque, and then these like Shakespeare troops a little bit is kind of everything that was going down there. So it wasn't, I mean, we're not talking musicals the way we have them today at all.
so it's
Um,
the movie The Greatest Show. I
hmm,
think that is the name of the movie, isn't it? The one about Barnum with
uh, Greatest Showman, or yeah,
yeah,
something like
yeah. So that's set in New York,
I believe
is it?
so.
I think so, yeah.
I
I
think
mean,
that's
it's I
what we're
think that's
talking
a
about.
great that's probably a great I loved that movie about P.T. Barnum, and
Yeah, it's
will give
fun.
you an idea of the types of shows that were being put on at
Yeah,
that time.
Because even if that isn't set in New York, that's still like what would have been kind of the primary forms of entertainment you have there. Um, so then we move forward a little bit, and you do see that opera starts to enter the US entertainment world. But then we have the Astor Place riots, which I didn't do a ton of research on, but seemingly this was a turning point when it was very obvious the division between the types of entertainment you were seeing and the class that you were in. So upper class was seeing opera, middle class was seeing minstrel shows and melodramas, so that would kind of more be Shakespeare and that kind of thing. And then the lowest class would be seeing more of these variety shows, which is kind of just like the way I kind of saw research talking about them, they sound a little bit like talent shows in a respect where it's like someone gets up, sings a song, someone else gets up, does some juggling. Like it's a little more,
It's a
it's fun.
variety show.
Yeah, it's a variety show. So yeah, that was kind of though an indication of we're not all coming together and watching the same forms of entertainment, which I think is interesting to see where we are now and the way that entertainment operates. Um, I did want to note that during this time, as I said, a lot of Shakespeare was being performed, and there were famous actors, including brother of Lincoln's assassin, Edwin Booth.
Yes, I wanted to make sure that you brought that up because I do believe that Edwin Booth, the great Shakespearean actor, did perform in Keene, New Hampshire at the Keene Summer Theater, which was a barn on our at our family home at one point. So I just remember that we discovered some tools that had the name Booth on them, which
Oh my
was
God.
that's kind of fun.
Yeah, for sure. That's really cool. Um,
Again,
yeah, I think
feel
it's
free to anyone can feel free to
correct.
check these facts, see if
Um,
there's agreement.
I mean, that makes sense though. A lot of the theater at the time, it was much more like a traveling troupe kind of form of entertainment. They didn't have these massive theaters that they would just perform constantly in. People, and it's reversed in the sense that now people travel to come see theater, where before it was theater traveled to you. So that's an interesting fact to point out. Thank you for that.
Oh, I
Um,
do what I can,
yeah.
just trying kind of keep things interesting.
So now I'm gonna talk a little bit about some geographicalness. So right
That's a
now,
word.
yeah, whatever. Some geographic location. So right now we're kind of in lower Manhattan, and it's now the 1850s, and real estate down there is getting more expensive. So we see a slow move to where current Broadway theaters reside with this move towards Midtown where there's cheaper real estate. We also see a invention come around, which is the musical. So like I said before, it was operas or these minstrel shows or Shakespeare or variety shows. There was no kind of like combining of those things. But in 1857, Broadway's first long run musical was a 50 performance hit called The Elves. I did not really feel like I wanted to look up what The Elves is about because I had looked up some other things before and was a little disturbed by some of the entertainment choices we were making at the time. So I just decided to leave it. But I do think it's interesting to note that like 50 performances was a long running show back then, where now like you're reaching thousands, tens of thousands of shows. So I don't know, I just think that's an interesting fact. Um, and we see this move happening from if you know New York well, this will make sense. If not, I'll try to describe it the best. But there's these kind of squares in Manhattan that are now park-like, I guess you would say. At the time, they were more like parks. But the lowest we're gonna talk about is Union Square, and then they moved so they were performing around there, then they moved up a little bit to Madison Square until they made their way to Times Square, where, as you may know, is the hub of Manhattan.
Well, if you think about that, you're talking about those things moving up.
Mhm.
And I was wondering if Madison Square was going to be on your list, but you think about you have Madison Square, then you have Madison Square Garden, and
Mm,
those two things are nowhere near each other.
no.
Um,
Yeah,
because the garden got built, became bigger and
right.
had to
Had
move.
to move. Yeah,
So but they kept the name. I believe
yeah.
that's the case. I assume there was a
I'm pretty
building
sure.
in Madison Square, but it's
I
much
would
further
assume so, but yeah,
south.
they're not if you know where Madison Square Garden is, you still have to go quite far south to reach actual Madison Square. Um, and it is interesting. I think there's a lot of really interesting history about the way New York is constructed in terms of where things are currently located versus where they started out, and just the real estate history of the city is fascinating. What is like the wealthy areas versus what is not wealthy areas. At the time that this was happening, Times Square was mostly farmland at the time, which is kind of crazy to think about, but that's why it was cheaper because there was nothing there. Um, but yeah, so
Well,
that's
Central Park too was all at that point was all farmland
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
had
mean,
never been
Sheep
developed at all.
Meadow is because that's where sheeps used to live because there was a high Irish immigration population there. So yeah, it is really interesting how everything kind of shaped out, but that's another episode. Um, So, going back to let's discuss musicals. So, obviously, musicals we can tell have a lot of influences from the previous forms of entertainment that were popular in the city. So, it's basically a Americanized version of an opera in a lot of ways, but then you add in the kind of vaudeville-ness of it with the costumes. And at this time, we also started seeing authors drawing from more real life experiences that New Yorkers might be facing rather than these kind of operas that draw from Greek myths and more traditional storytelling methods. Um, so it kind of became just the most popular form of entertainment in the city, and it was also helped because there was a a decrease in poverty. There was increased transportation with the trains, there was a lot more safety because they started adding street lamps to the neighborhood, um, and then when you have more people who want to come see these shows and can see these shows, you start doing longer runs because there's more possible patrons. So it kind of still it while it was like a building success before World War One, Broadway was constantly trying and kind of failing. Not they were just on the tails always of London's West End, which I'm not going to talk about a lot here, but it's basically Broadway of London. So I mean it's I mean, now you see a lot of collaboration between the 2. I think a lot of people would say that West End at this point has a lot more, um, ability to produce a variety of things, where to get on Broadway, you have to be really trying to appeal to the masses on a different level, and I think that just has to do with culture and money and all that kinda stuff. Um, but yeah, before we move fully into the 20th century, I do wanna note that around this time, there was actually an increase in Black produced musicals in the late 19th century and early 20th century. So this is not the kind of minstrel shows where we saw blackface happening. This is actually art form created and made and acted in by Black people. And I think it's you could do a whole you could write a whole book on Black theater in America and the history of it. It's really fascinating, but I did just want to note that for you guys. This is kind
And
of ironic.
I'm sure someone has written a book about
Oh,
it.
I'm sure, but and I feel like I need to do more research on that. Um, but moving into the 20th century, this is kind of an ironic switch, and it doesn't mean what you think it means, but the the area now known as Broadway started being called the Great White Way. Nothing to do with race, but it was regarding white lighting that you would see on the marquees. So this was something that was very common at the time, like amusement parks would often have like a lot of white lighting. This is because colored bulbs burn out faster and the replacement of them is like challenging given that they're on high signs. So that kind of brought the original energy of the billboard in Times Square to life, which I thought was just a cool thing to note.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that this has been like going back so far. Um, but in the 20th century, we see a regular increase in the amount of performances continue. Uh, there's kind of this emphasis put on the spectacle of it all rather than the storytelling at this time period in this time period. So if you think to like the Ziegfeld Follies, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's much more, it's making fun songs with incredibly elaborate costuming and really gorgeous cohesive dance numbers, but there's not always a storyline that goes through the whole thing. But it's really fun to watch. And I think that that helped a lot with Broadway's ability to compete and theater in general, but their ability to compete with the growing movie industry was because it's not like you're going to the theater to see a movie be played out in front of you. You're going to the theater for the spectacle of it all. So I think that's just an interesting thing to note as well. But then in between the world wars, there started to again be this increase in serious topics and storylines. So we start moving away from the spectacle of it all and start moving into the more drama and the comedy of life. We get a lot more really famous playwrights around this time period. So plays become more popular because they're good now. um, so that this is also something that maybe I should have clarified at the beginning. So a Broadway theater can house a play or a musical. It just tends to be that given demand, more plays tend to be in off-Broadway theaters because it's smaller, and more musicals tend to have higher demand, so they're in the bigger Broadway theaters. But that's not always the case. You can have a play or a musical on Broadway, off Broadway, off Broadway in a different city. Who cares? It doesn't really matter. That's not in the stipulations of what makes something on Broadway. But yeah, so we start to get more plays at the time, and there's actually a lot of Broadway dramas that are addressing the rise of Nazism in Europe and the issue of America not getting involved, which I think is fascinating. And we've seen a lot of these um pieces revived recently. So basically when something runs on Broadway for the first time, that's its initial run, and then you can have a revival which comes back. So it's a piece that's already been a Broadway show and is now returning, usually with a different cast and new director. Often there's more kind of current takes thrown in there. It's really cool. Sometimes they do really well and are really interesting. Other times they're kind of just like, okay, well, now I've seen that. That was something that existed. I don't know. It's some things are good revivals and sometimes it's just like, yeah, I get why that was popular back then, but I don't really see the connection to why you're showing it now and what you're trying to prove, but yeah. So then, very exciting, moving away from Nazism. We have Oklahoma. So wait, I did this out of order because Oklahoma came out right after the Great Depression. So that was like a very big, exciting moment for theater. Um, and it lasted on Broadway for quite a while. Um,
Beat the 50 show record.
oh yeah, we've beat that a little while ago. I just didn't feel the need to include every show because it was kind of, at this point, I think we're reaching the hundreds at the least.
Can
Um,
I ask you a question before you
yeah,
move on here? And I don't know if you know the answer to this, but
yeah,
we talked about the traveling troops that did the Shakespeare and stuff like
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I'm wondering if the Broadway theaters in the time that in the early 1900s, did a particular actor or actress basically perform at the same theater all the time? Was there like a or could they move around to different shows? Do you have any idea? Do you know what I mean?
I'm not
And
sure I totally get what you're saying. I
the
think you're,
whole I think the reason that I'm asking the question is because I remember during in the sort of the heyday of the movies back in the 30s, 40s, 50s,
mhm.
a particular actress would be under contract with a
Yes, okay.
studio,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that was and they couldn't go do another movie that another studio was producing. And I'm
Yeah.
just wondering if the same thing applied to the theater.
So, no. Um, the because of the nature of theater, it was very different. It was much looser than the kind of contract system that Hollywood had. And actually that was a problem for Hollywood, particularly in the 30s and 40s, would be because live theater didn't have the same kind of contract system. Hollywood didn't know like what to do when actors or actresses wanted to go do a performance like that. Um, that's besides the point. So I think what may be confusing, and this is good that you brought it up because I don't know that I made this clear. At the time that they're moving towards Times Square, there's still not this established form of Broadway. That doesn't happen till later. Um, it's kind of, you know, once you start getting into like the 50s, you start to have more of a glance of what we have currently happening, but it wasn't, and I think that's also maybe something that's confusing is the theaters themselves, like the buildings, are not connected to specific shows or specific actors. They're basically rental spaces. I mean, that's a really dumbed down version of how it happens because obviously if you think about shows that like the Phantom of the Opera ran in the same space for so long. So it like was at a certain point kind of connected to that theater, but it inherently wasn't. They could have moved out at any point. They had a contract with the theater, but it's the production, not the actors necessarily. So I think when you're talking about these traveling actors, it would more likely be there's a theater that agree. It's more like a concert, right? It's like
Yeah,
we're on tour, we need a place to play. Okay, well we're open for the next 30 nights. You guys can do it here, if that makes sense.
yep,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, so now going back to the original timeline I was on, sorry about the
Sorry.
random Oklahoma mention. But I will say Oklahoma kind of changed the game a little bit in terms of it did bring outsiders to the city in the form that they wanted to see this. And then obviously Oklahoma was later made into a film. So you see that kind of start to happen where there's almost collaboration between Broadway and musicals and theater and the Hollywood industry. Um,
I have to just do Oklahoma. Sorry.
I thought you would maybe want to do that. So I do have a quote about the 50s, which I found really interesting and couldn't really figure out how to reword it. But John Kenrick, who is a theater historian, he said about Broadway musicals, um, every season saw new stage musicals send songs to the top of the charts. Public demand, a booming economy, and abundant creative talent kept Broadway hopping. To this day, the shows of the 1950s form the core of the musical theater repertoire. Um, so I think that that's like a really important way to say the 50s established current day Broadway. We see a lot of revivals from the 50s still happening. You could probably name musicals from the 50s that you don't even necessarily know are from the 50s. Um, there was just this kind of like, you know, Broadway was starting to be advertised to the public in a different way. It became more of an establishment in society of this is important theater and it's good theater and you should come and try to see it. And there was also a lot of emphasis put on wanting to support creative arts and trying to like I don't like produce more of these shows because it was profitable, but it was also good for the artist. Um, so I thought that was important to note. But then in the 60s and the 70s, we start to see a decline in Broadway theater going. It has a lot to do with the safety of the area. So Times Square in the 60s and the 70s became much more known for prostitution, drugs, unsafeness, and that doesn't really go along with what the Broadway audience is. Um, so you started to get lower attendance rates. There were still shows that were coming out, but they wouldn't last as long because the people who lived here and felt comfortable going to that area already saw them, so they didn't need to see them again. That's a huge part of it is you need to keep interest active and wanting people to come back or wanting new people to come see it for the first time. However, and at this point also, I should note, ticket costs had risen quite a bit too, because in the 50s it was booming so much, so prices go up, right? And, economically, we were following the trends of the time. That all makes sense. But in the 60s and 70s, you know, you might be less willing to take a chance on just going to see a Broadway show because it's like, well, they're not doing as well, so they're probably not as good. Like there was this kind of cycle that happened where the shows weren't doing as good because of the safety of the area. So there was low attendance, but then people assumed the low attendance meant that the shows were not up to the standards of the decades previously. So it kind of like cycled that way.
Ah, vicious cycle.
Yes. But good thing came from this. We started getting subsidized tickets. So this today would be known as like the lottery system or rush tickets. So these are cheaper tickets. Um Lottery, the way the system works now, lottery tickets are reserved ahead of time. Um Specifically to be cheaper price tickets, and you have to kind of just it's by chance. Rush tickets, on the other hand, are like day of tickets that are purchased in the morning of like whatever's left in the theater to just try and sell it out. But you start to see that kind of a rise in the 60s and 70s, which is still something that happens today and is the reason I get to go see a lot of shows. So I really appreciate it. So then in moving on to the 80s, there started to be more movements to kind of creatively bring Broadway back, but also a lot of it had to do with kind of physically saving the theaters. So there was the Save the Theaters movement, which involved Ed Koch. How do you say his name?
That's it. Ed
That's it.
Koch, the
Okay.
mayor of New York.
He was
Yes.
the mayor at the time, and you know, he existed. Um,
Well,
but
so do the theaters. So
yeah, yeah. Well, so they were trying to get the Broadway theater district as well as the theaters established as like historical landmarks so that they could not be torn down and destroyed. Um this kind of gave people the impression that they wanted theater again. So then other people started producing more shows, and you kind of get the opposite cycle happening where then it's like, oh, wait, people want to go see shows? Let's make more shows. Oh, there's people showing up. Oh, so that means that Broadway's back, baby. Um, so yeah, that kind of continued through the 80s and the 90s. I'm a little the current from my research, I'm a little confused about what the actual distinction of like what is a historical district and what isn't is. Um it like I tried to the theater district is not registered as a historic district. However, there was a theater advisory council formed by the mayor as like a response to this because they didn't do the like preservation kind of thing. Um, but it seems that basically that it was put in place to be like a government agency to protect Broadway and the theater district. Um, I don't really know what's going on with that today, other than that they've all those theaters for the most part are still around.
yeah, how many?
But
How
that's
old
great.
are the? How old are some of these theaters? And um, I mean, are they building? Have they built new ones?
Yeah, they
I
have
guess
built
is
new ones. So I believe I know there are two newer theaters. I'm gonna not get their names right, but one of them is the theater that is in that you've been to. We saw the Britney Spears musical at it, which is in the it's in a hotel. It's in the Marriott,
okay.
kind of. It's like the second floor of the
Oh,
Marriott.
right.
That's a newer theater. And then there's another newer theater where I've seen it's a theater that I saw the Tammy Faye show, but I don't know the name of it. But you
Okay.
can very easily tell that those are modern theaters, it's
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
look totally different. I just looked it up, and the oldest Broadway theater is the Lyceum, which is on 45th Street and was opened in 1903.
Wow.
I imagine that that's not like you've been there actually as well. That's where we saw Oh Mary.
Ah,
I imagine though that there's probably a lot of theaters that are around like the 1910s,
20s and okay.
1920s, 1930s kind of
Okay.
would be my guess. They've had a lot of theaters have to close down for periods of time to do restoration work as well. But also they can do a lot of that when shows are switching over, because obviously the sets need to be restored and um, a lot
Or
of them
built.
have quite or built, but a lot of them have quite intricate kind of details to them.
They're
Um,
really, I mean, they're really cool. The
yeah,
older
they're
theaters and
gorgeous.
the ceilings and the walls and stuff like
Yeah.
that and on some of them. And
Yeah.
now you said there were 41 Broadway theaters, is
Yes,
that
there are
right?
currently 41 Broadway theaters, yeah, or
And
professional theaters.
do you have any idea at a given time how many have a show going on,
I would
roughly?
say a lot of them. I,
Yeah. So,
I
I mean,
can
there
Google
could be
that.
35 Broadway shows going on at a given time.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. Well,
Uh,
I
Let me check how many Broadway theaters are active right now. I mean, if you have ever been to a Broadway show, you may know what um, a playbill is. Um,
I do.
yes, and if you go to the back of a playbill, you can see all the other shows that are currently on or sometimes off Broadway shows are back there. Um, yeah, all I'm getting is that there are 41 Broadway theaters in operation, so I don't know how many have a show in them right now, but I would
Okay,
guess
that's all
at
right.
least like 90%. I mean, for example, so I live really close to a lot of these theaters, like I have to walk by most of them to get anywhere. Currently, there's a theater that's about to host Mamma Mia, so that like I would consider it active because it just had a show that just left it, and it's about to have a show, but, like, nothing could go in there between because they have to build the sets, right? So, like,
Right,
it's not
right,
but there's nothing showing in it today, like, if I went there, I couldn't get a ticket for a
right.
show
But
tonight,
there's but
but
there's
there
no
is
theaters. Most theaters have something either going or scheduled to go.
yeah,
Okay. All right,
um,
that's kinda what I was getting at.
yeah. I think there was one theater that they just did, like, a whole restoration process to. I believe it actually had to do with the fact that when Grease was running there, they painted the outside of the theater pink and then wrote something on it, and they had to then, when Grease ended its run, had to, like, repaint the outside, but they just painted over it, but it was starting to, like, show through again, and they had to do a bunch of other restoration work to the theater, so yeah. Um, but also to your point, I mean, the theater that, like, Wicked in is a pretty new theater, comparatively speaking. If you look at it, it's looks like it's in a modern skyscraper building. It's not in these kind of old style theaters. But yeah, I mean, I believe that Schubert owns over 50% of the theaters, and then there's 2 other companies that own the rest of them, except for there are a couple of nonprofit organizations that run Broadway shows that have their own theaters. Um, I'm trying to think of I think it's the f most of the theaters are named after people, but some of them like, there is the 42nd Street Theater, which is just called that, and I'm almost positive that that's a nonprofit theater. I can double check that, but yeah, for the most part, they're kind of like they are more it's more like a rental space than
Mm.
anything else. Obviously, they have to restore these buildings because they're old. Um,
Well, maybe we should get to
but
what
yeah.
is going on in these rental spaces.
Yes. Well, I did just quickly want to touch on the fact that so in the 80s and 90s and moving into the 2000s, there's a couple things that are now commonplace that were like introduced in that kind of time period, and that is touring Broadway shows. So that's where shows that and again, this is like it can be a show that's been on Broadway for a long time, has ended its run on Broadway, anything like that, go on national tours and they will go to other cities. Sometimes you have the original cast continue on those tours, other times the original cast is still on Broadway and you have a totally different group on the tour. But those are really cool because they also increase the visibility of Broadway and of theater, and they allow access to more people to go see them. And then the other thing is the preview cities. So this is where you have, I mean, we have been to many of these shows in Boston. This is where musicals who are trying to get picked up to go to Broadway will do shows in mainly Boston and DC are the 2 biggest ones. You also see collaboration between European countries with this kind of thing too, mainly uh West End. But it's like you're seeing a Broadway level musical before it gets picked up to go to Broadway. And that's mainly so that they can get an idea of what audiences like, what they don't like. And then those shows, if they do get picked up, will take those kind of changes and run with them. Oftentimes, though, you'll see like that's where casts are built, and that's where it's just kind of a way to establish. We actually saw the Beetlejuice musical in DC before it was picked up on Broadway with the actor who I think like established that role, but also like made it pretty famous. Um, he also did the School of Rock musical. He was the main
Mm.
guy in that. He's a fun actor. I like watching him. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of another thing. And then they'll open in New York and they'll do previews here where they're still kind of workshopping things for this audience. But I think that's a cool way if you live in one of those cities to go see this level of entertainment before it even reaches here.
Mm.
Um,
I mean, the ART in Cambridge is one that we've seen a number. I remember we saw six there,
hmm,
um, and then it didn't go to Broadway because of COVID, and
right.
then eventually, but that was one that I believe came out of the West End
It
and
did,
went
yeah.
to Boston, and then
Yeah.
to eventually to Broadway. One of the great shows that I've seen, and then
Yeah, that's a
the
fun.
other one that I think, and I you can tell me because we saw it together, was 1776. Did that go to Broadway?
It did go to Broadway. They
Did
made
they
a
cut like three or four
yeah.
songs out of it?
So for those, this is actually going back to the revival discussion. So I've seen 1776 twice. I saw the original kind of form of the musical, the way it was written, very traditional, at the theater where Lincoln was shot, actually,
Ford's
on
Theater.
the Ford's Theater on a class trip to DC, and all of our chaperones fell asleep, which was great. So the
Maybe
show itself,
could have used a booth gunshot there to
well,
wake them
yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah. The show itself is not the most fascinating, clearly in its original form, but they did a revival where it was all women, um, mainly women of color, as I remember correctly, telling the story of 1776 and the writing of the Declaration of Independence. And it was a really like, I found it fascinating. I thought it was an interesting take for the time period it was coming out in. I thought it was good, but it was way too long. But I don't think that's their fault. I think that's the musical's fault itself, not the creatives on this project. Um, but yes, I believe that after its run in Boston, they did shorten a good chunk of the show because people who I talked to, I didn't actually go see it again, but the people I talked to, one of my friends actually saw both of them and he said, "Oh my God, it was so good in New York comparatively." So yeah, it's theater's hard when you're dealing with serious subjects because it is like you want it to be, there's something about Broadway that is inherently more fun, um, especially a musical. And it's sometimes that's a hard line to walk when you're talking about like really serious subject matters. I think, I've seen a lot of shows that have been about these more intense parts of our history. And I think that Broadway is one of the best art forms for kind of talking about it in a more understanding way almost, and a more kind of like, it's not, I don't want to say dumbed down because it's not necessarily dumbed down. It's just like a
It makes it
much
more
more,
approachable.
yeah, and it's really, I think because you get a lot of, obviously with Broadway, as with theater, you get these kind of monologues, but when you're singing a monologue about your feelings, I think there's something that sometimes touches people in a different way and allows them to have more empathy. Um,
I think one of the best
so I think
examples
that
of
that's
that,
nice.
talking about it historically, is Hamilton,
Oh yeah.
and just the, I mean, probably not the most exciting story in the world, but made so because of the music, and all of a sudden people had a greater grasp of history because of that. And
Yeah.
I wish we had more of that, and more people saw things like that that
Yeah.
made them understand kind of what it is that we're fighting for in some ways.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking also of the parade revival in particular. I think they did a really good job with that. They did it pretty traditional in the sense of, they didn't change the time period it was in, but given the subject matter and, you know, especially when it came out, the discussions around it I thought were good. I thought they weren't kind of like condescending in a way.
I've never seen that. What is
So
that?
Parade is a story about um a southern town, and it's kind of, you're dealing with racial conflict, but you're also dealing with religious conflict because the protagonist is a Jewish lawyer, I believe, and he is helping a black man. Um and it's I mean, the story, if you like simplify it down, is incredibly disturbing, but they're able to bring it's still disturbing when it's in detail, not to clarify, but they're able to add so much kind of like um empathy to the characters that are like, I don't know that you get that from I don't know, I don't know that you always get that from TV and movies. I think art in any form is important, but there is something to be said for, like, seeing an actor right in front of you do something and the impact that that has on you in an emotional way. Um, there's been a lot of shows that I've seen. I'm currently in, like, I say currently, it's been, like, the past 2 years. I'm really into plays right now. Um, and every like, I love musicals, I think they're great, but I have seen so many plays in the past 2 years that have not, maybe if you break it down, not been the most complex of story, but the storytelling, the acting, and the impact of it being live has caused such a kind of emotional reaction in me that I have very little control over, and I think it's really, like, there's something spectacular about that. Even if I don't love the show, I'm still responding that way. Um, my favorite show that I've seen recently is called John Proctor is the Villain, which is just absolutely remarkable. I got to see it with my sister, which was even cooler. But it's about I don't wanna, like, give the story away too much, but it's about a town in the South and about a group of girls who wants to, start a feminist club, but then this stuff kinda happens and they realize they don't really know what feminism is, they don't really know what it is to be a woman, they don't know how to protect themselves. There's so many things about it, and as someone who grew up watching shows like Pretty Little Liars and Gossip Girl, where it was, like, normalized to have relationships with teachers and it was glorified this kind of behavior on some level, and really was, like, grooming of a generation, this show just felt so much like a sigh of relief and like a breath of fresh air, and it was acted to perfection. I mean, it was written incredibly, directed incredibly, but these actors really give you, like, their whole soul. And I don't know, there's something special about that you can get kind of from watching it on TV or in a movie theater, but there is something additional with live theater, I think. And I think that the more we can get everyone to be able to see it, everyone to have access to it, the better society might be. Um But yeah, so moving on from that, we can talk about some more fun shows that we've liked and some other
Well,
stuff.
I'll just jump in
Yeah.
because of the you're talking about plays
Hmm.
and heavy topics, and one play that we saw, Mom and I saw recently, I don't think you went with us, was To Kill a Mockingbird. And
Hmm.
it was um, one of the most amazing shows that I've seen. And it's such a moving story. And now I can't remember who was playing the lead, but um, he was so good. I feel bad that I don't remember who it was.
That's okay.
Um, it was, I mean, just a great show, and it's the kind of night that you just go, yeah, this is what Broadway is supposed to be. Is
Mhm.
is um, take your breath away type of thing, even
Yeah.
without music.
Yeah.
Um,
You can either get that from the spectacle or you get it from the story or you get it from both. I mean, there are some shows that are spectacle but also are so impactful in that way too.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, some plays that I've seen recently too that I brought you to, which are a little lighter, but I feel like we're still very impactful. The first one I want to talk about is stereophonic, which I think is a really innovative way of storytelling. It's very Fleetwood Mac coded, I would say,
But is
storyline
that
wise.
considered a
That is a play.
that's a play, right?
Yes. So it's it's a play because the dialogue is primarily spoken. There is music in it, but there's very few full songs. I think the set is incredibly innovative because you're basically the whole show is done around this Fleetwood Mac like band that is recording an album, and the set is the studio. So you have the front part of the set, which is like the lounge part of a studio, and then you have the back part of the set, which is a booth. And you just get these kind of, I don't know, the first time I saw it, I felt like this is the realest play I've ever seen because you just have these moments where people are just talking to each other kind of about nothing. And you're like, are they ad-libbing? Like this could just be like a normal conversation because they're talking over each other. It's not always, not every comment's important, which I think a lot of the time plays can be that way. But I just thought it was a really creative endeavor. I thought it was really cool and I thought it was really well done. And, it did have some really like interesting discussions for me about kind of narcissism and how to deal with maybe a relationship that isn't great but also isn't awful. Um, Marriage confusion, stuff like that. I thought it was fun. And then of course the other one we have to talk about is Oh Mary.
Well, yeah, that's, marriage and relationships. That's what that's all about for sure.
Mhm.
That was that was an incredible show.
Yeah.
One of the most bizarre, funny, strange performances,
Yeah.
shows that I've ever seen. It really was. Um, it was very unique, to say the
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. So
Um,
Cola Scola did an incredible job both writing, creating, and acting in it. I thought it was, it's just it's such a fun show, but it's also so yeah, it's just there's just something about it that's just phenomenal and really special. And even though it's not necessarily the most kind of like serious or maybe important story, I think it's also important in the fact that it was made and successful.
mm, mm.
Because I, you
It's the
know,
story.
people
It's
themselves
the
is
partially true story of Mary Todd Lincoln. So you
yes,
need to you
right,
need to
which
know that
but
that
but I think it's
well,
just to have like this queer person create this remarkable art form and then get it to the level that they got it to and then be rewarded for it at the Tonys, which we haven't really talked about because I personally am not a huge award fan person, but I do think that was a really important moment for them and that made me happy. Um I think that's where you get that kind of like theater is important from that show, I guess what I
Mm-hmm.
would say. Because then that inspires other kids to be able to do whatever they want and pursue whatever creative dreams they want to do, no matter who they are, which is cool, I think.
Absolutely. I want to, before we go any further, I just want to
Yes.
say that Jeff Daniels
Okay. Oh my God. Yeah, that would have been really
was the lead
embarrassing
in
to
To
get
Kill a
that email.
Mockingbird. So I did want to bring that up again
Okay.
because it was one of the most amazing performances that
Did he
I've seen.
play Atticus Finch? Is that
Yes.
oh, okay?
Yeah. Oh
Wow.
yeah. And
Yeah,
he was so good.
that's
It was
cool.
amazing.
Well, I
Okay.
did want to talk about some musicals, some of my favorite musicals right now, give some recommendations, but then also some of the important ones I think we should talk about.
Hmm.
Um, so right now, if somebody was coming to New York this weekend and was like, what should I go see? There are two shows that I think a lot of people will find enjoyment in and are really incredible. And the first of those is Death Becomes Her, which is based on the Meryl Streep film, one of my favorite camp films of all time. And the show is just phenomenal. It's uh the cast is like top tier. They are so talented. And it's just a spectacular performance show. The songs are stupid and fun, and the set designs are great. Uh, yeah, it's just highly recommend. And I think it's also a nice story about friendship too, which is lovely. And the second, which you have seen, is Operation Mincemeat, which I love dearly. I think it is phenomenal. Again, I think it's a show that was made with the expectations that maybe no one would ever see it. And the fact that it has reached the level it has reached and has extended its run for, I think, a third time on Broadway. It's a show that was created by like a theater troupe in the UK, a comedy theater troupe. And it's the story of a real operation during World War II that is probably widely unknown. There is a movie on Netflix about it if you're interested in
Perhaps a little more serious.
learning about it. Yeah. But it is the show is just so freaking funny. It's so witty. It's so smart, but it's not too smart that you feel dumb watching it.
It
And
is amazingly
cast is
well
so good.
produced and
Yeah.
directed.
Yeah.
It is seamless the way it switches from scene to scene, and
It's only
the
five
actors
actors.
changing costumes,
Yeah.
changing characters, changing everything. It is a really cool show.
And it's
Um,
also, I mean, it has raw emotional moments. I cried during one of the songs. I don't want to spoil if you do go see it, but like there it's just I laughed, I cried, I had a great time, and I feel like both of these shows to me embody everything I want from a Broadway musical. It's good storytelling, great acting and directing, strong music, and like just a feeling that you get from
mm,
watching it, an excitement of like this is theater, like this is Broadway. And I know that sounds cheesy, but that's like that's what I want from my shows, and they both give that to you.
I
um
would say there's one that I would bring up which I did not see on Broadway, and I've already mentioned it because I saw it before it went to Broadway. But you reminded me of it when you talk about this troupe in England
mhm,
writing this story, and the same thing happened with Six, in that
mhm.
it was somebody writing it as a college project,
Yeah,
and writing these songs about the six wives of Henry VIII, and it is a spectacular musical show.
yeah,
You know, that story set to rock music that just blows you away. It is one of the great soundtracks of a musical,
Yeah.
that that I could listen to all the time. It's really good.
Yeah.
Um, so I did
That's a
want to
fun
mention that one.
one. I would definitely say like if you have kids too, that's like a good one because they'll have fun even if they don't fully understand. Like there's enough context that they'll get what's going on. And it's just fun to watch because it's kind of like it's a little more like a concert than just a
Yeah, exactly.
musical.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, the other ones I would say, like, those were my top two. If someone was like, I can only see one show, those would be the two that I'm like, you have to see this, especially because Operation Mincemeat is, I think, probably not going to extend again, just because it has been these same five actors basically for years. Because this was also on the West End for a really long time, too. Um, so and I don't know that they could necessarily recast it just because of the nature, like you said, of all the transitions and how smooth it is. But yeah, I would say the other ones I would suggest would be Six. Moulin Rouge is always fun. And Juliet is very popular right now. Those are both jukebox musicals, which if you don't know what that is, that's what Mamma Mia is. So it's taking usually one artist. In those two cases it's a variety of artists, but it's taking songs that already exist and putting them into a story. um I'm trying to think what else. I mean, obviously Wicked and Hamilton are kind of the two big ones that if you haven't seen, most people would tell you to go see. I think Hamilton is great. I'm not the biggest Lin-Manuel Miranda fan, but I think that show is really impressive. And what he's done for theater and his kindness, I do appreciate. Um, Wicked, I know there's a movie. I get it. It's not the same thing. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not that sorry. Like the show is just like I don't know even how to tell you. It's I saw it when I was a kid, and there are memories of that show that have like never left me. It's just some of the practical effects that go into theater are so crazy. Like what they're able to do, small scale, big scale, massive scale. It's like, what? And now we have that even on another level with these two. Um, I'm actually just gonna highlight one of them because screw J.K. Rowling, but the Stranger Things play, which I didn't mention before, but is phenomenal if you're into Stranger Things, I highly recommend. But what they've done with special effects on that show is like, how did you do that? Like you're watching it and you're like, that has to actually be magic because that I don't understand. Like I can't even kind of grasp how you could technologically produce something that causes that to happen. Um, so that's just another level that, I think Wicked brought in a lot of those kind of effects to another level, and now you just see it skyrocket from there. But those would be some of the big ones. I'm trying to think
We
what
are kind of
else.
approaching Broadway show length with this particular
Yeah,
episode.
yes.
Um, so I guess
Apologies.
I would just ask that maybe some of your favorite shows that you've seen in your life.
I mean, I think Legally Blonde is up there for sure. Oh my God, I should have made a list of this. This is bad. Uh, I really liked, I saw, this is a play, but I saw the picture of Dorian Gray with Sarah Snook from Succession. Um, these are gonna be a lot of plays. Prima Facie was really good. Um, I'm trying to like look at my playbill wall behind
But
me.
I'm
Um,
talking about stuff that you saw like growing up and stuff.
yeah,
What was the first thing you ever saw? Do you remember?
I don't know what the first, I think it was probably The Lion King, which is talk about special effects. Kinky Boots, love Kinky Boots.
See, I
That was
thought the
one of
first
the
thing you
first
saw
ones.
was Annie,
Oh,
but
probably Annie, yeah. I think
but
Annie and The Lion
but it
King
wasn't
were
on
like
Broadway.
elementary.
That would have been in Boston.
No, but touring Broadway.
Yeah, yeah.
I love Kinky Boots. I mean, The Book of Mormon. Come on now, that's a great show.
I
Highly
just
recommend.
saw that for the first
So
time
funny.
fairly recently, and that
Yeah,
I
on the
loved that
West
show.
End.
Yes, that's right.
That one is just really just funny.
Yeah,
Uh,
I will say that I remember a weekend that we had in New York. We saw two shows back to back, and now I can't remember the name of the second one, but the first one was Mean Girls.
Marilyn
And
Manson was the other one.
yes, that's right. And
But Mean Girls, I love Mean Girls. That was
Mean
good.
Girls is one of my favorite shows of all time. I
It's
just
fun.
love that show, and
And the
the
movie did not do it justice, and that's not Renee Rapp's fault. Those are my
okay.
thoughts on that. I just gotta put that out there. Um, because everyone hated the movie, and I like get why they hated the movie, but the musical itself was
The
really,
musical was insane. The characters, the actors who
yeah.
played the friends. Oh my God,
Go listen
so
to like
good.
the original soundtrack, the Broadway recordings. They're so fun. They have so much more like character than the movie allowed them to have. It's really great. Um, I'm trying to think what else. I mean, the Cabaret, the revival of that has been really interesting. I've seen that a couple times. I did get to see Ariana Madix in Chicago for you Bravo fans out there, which she killed it. So good for her. Um, oh, Drag the Musical, an off-Broadway production. Uh, Phenomenal. Phenomenal. The song Drag is Expensive is like in my regular rotation. I freaking love that musical. Um, what else? Oh, Titanic, which is a retelling of Titanic set to the music of Celine Dion. Like, are you kidding? Again, that's an off-Broadway, but fabulous. But yeah, there's a lot. I love a lot of shows.
Yeah.
The Carole King musical was really good. I'm definitely missing some stuff in there. Uh, I really liked, oh, I like actually not to not to make this a dark or a negative, but the only musical by a certain someone that I like is the School of Rock musical. I mentioned Beetlejuice is really good. I'm not going to say who the person is. I don't need to get destroyed. Um, yeah, School of Rock was good. I actually really enjoyed the SpongeBob musical. I know, hot take, but I had a fun time. But yeah, I don't know. There's like this is I always say I have never left a theater show early. There is only one show that I thought about leaving early, and yes, it was Bad Cinderella. But I didn't leave because I still feel like even the shows I haven't loved, I still get something out of it. Like I still get an enjoyment out of it. I still get a lesson out of it. I still get something I hate out of it. Whatever it might be, there's still like something exciting about going to the theater, unless you're watching Bad Cinderella, and then you might just, want to
Well,
die.
you
Um,
need a bottom. You need a bottom to compare everything to.
Exactly,
So
exactly. Oh my God, how could I forget Mamma Mia? Love Mamma Mia. That's coming back for a limited run. If anyone wants to make a trip to New York, feel free to reach out. I'd love to go see that with you. But yeah, that's kind of, I feel like now I'm just listening to every musical I've ever.
yeah, you really have touched them all.
It's kind of a problem. The
Peter
final,
Pan. Do you
I
remember
don't,
seeing
yeah.
Peter Pan?
I remember seeing it vaguely and I remember not liking it.
I liked it.
Something I really want to see is one of my favorite Disney movies is Hercules. I haven't even touched on Disney and Broadway, which again could be like its own podcast because what they're doing is crazy. Um, but I really would love to see, they're doing it on the West End right now, is Hercules, the musical. And I have seen some YouTube videos of the Muses songs. Oh my God, fabulous. Um, and the final thing I will leave you with, the most recent musical I saw was The Outsiders, which I personally never liked the book, never liked the movie, don't like the story, but the dancing and the fight scenes in that musical are superb, and I highly recommend, if that's something you're into, that you should go see that musical. And maybe you do like the story of The Outsiders. Um, but yeah, those are my big ones. All of them.
Okay. Well, I think
I
we've gotten through this
definitely
without
listed
needing an
them.
intermission.
I
So
know, I'm
I
really
think that's
sorry,
probably
Russ.
good.
I've just like talked for so long about this.
That's good. That's good. I'm glad you are so interested in it and so passionate
Oh my
about it. And
God, hairspray. Sorry.
okay. All right.
Sorry. I'll stop talking now.
Okay.
That was the one I was thinking of that I forgot. Anyways.
All right. Well, if anybody noticed any kind of an audio change, we've talked so long that my headphones have now gone out. We will need to end it here, I think.
Well, thank you guys very much for listening to me ramble about Broadway. Go support live theater. Get those subsidized tickets. If you're coming to New York, reach out and I will go see a show with you. But yeah, everybody have a good weekend. Go do something fun.
Stay
Make
cool.
somebody smile. Stay cool. All right, we'll talk to you next week. Bye guys. Bye, Dad.
Bye, girl.
Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed the episode, follow us on your favorite podcast platforms, rate us, and leave a review.